Alright, hello everyone. So this is another one of my preseason rankings. This one is going to be, as you can probably guess already, on LEC, or as you have most likely seen in the title. And here I have the rankings of the teams. Obviously, I'm slowly going to put them in order. But here, actually, I try to do something a bit different. Oftentimes, when I personally do my rankings, I rank the individual players in my head or kind of wage them against each other. And then, based on the overall strength of the team, I rank the individual teams. And so I thought it would be a fun idea to do kind of a ranking just purely based on strength of the rosters. And so what I did was that I basically marked every single player on every single role from 1 to 10, 1 being the best and 10 being the worst. And then I gave them the points in reverse order. Basically, if you were the 10th best player, you only get 1 point. If you were the best player, the first player in your position, you got 10 points. Obviously, the system is quite a bit lacking. You cannot account for someone being 2 times better than his counterpart, someone being 4 times worse, etc. Regardless, the system has worked pretty well for me in the past, and uh, as you can see, or as you are going to see in the video, it's not as bad of a predictor of the rankings as one would initially think. Oh yes, just to mention, obviously after I ranked every player, I added them up based on the teams they were in. And so this was the ranking that came out. Fnatic were the best by far. Actually, I ranked 4 out of their 5 players as the best. Wander was the only player that I don't think is the best in their role, or at least in the top two. I think Humanoid, for example, is definitely debatable. So is Hillisang and Razor. And then I had Vitality, then G2. Wait a sec. Then I had Vitality, then G2, then Mad Lions actually, Rogue, Excel, BDS, Misfits, SK, and then Astralis were the absolute worst of the worst, and we'll talk about that when it comes to it. Anyway, so let's start off right away, and as I already said, because I think most of the players on the team are just the best in their role, I will put Fnatic in S tier. And this is interesting because initially, uh, okay, I have a confession to make. I am kind of a Fnatic hater. I really did not want to put them first. I initially had them second, actually, behind Vitality as the second best team. But then I just looked over the rosters. For anyone who doesn't maybe know the rosters, I can read them out loud to you. So Fnatic have Wander, Razork, Humanoid, Upset, and Hillisang. And Yamato Cannon, of course, is their coach. And I think with the strength of the other rosters, basically this is just the best that you can put together this season. Honestly, like Humanoid was the best mid laner in my eyes last year. I think he's going to continue improving. Upset Hillisang were the best bot lane by far, and Razor is again one of the most certainly one of the top 3 junglers, if not the best jungler in the league. So the only question mark is Wander, and if Wander continues having the same kind of troubles he had last year, then Fnatic could run into some issues. But since top lane should not be as heavily focused right now, Wander can maybe scale up a bit, get the spring split uh, as a warm up, and then in summer come back to his form where we know that he can be world class. So I wouldn't be as concerned about Wander, and regardless, even if he was pretty bad, the rest of the team can just be good enough that they then second team, and I'll put these two teams up together. So Vitality and G2. I feel like the two probably most hyped rosters, or maybe Fnatic are up there as well, but to me, where Fnatic are pretty obvious candidates for the title. G2 and Vitality have both made some massive changes in the offseason, where Fnatic basically only upgraded. G2 and Vitality had to take some risks. And so let's read out the rosters once again. So for Vitality, it's Alphari, Selfmade, Perks, Karze, and Labrov. Whereas G2 have Broken Blade into plane, Jankos as a jungler, Caps a mid laner, Flaked as their ADC, and Targamas as a support. With the coaching stuff changed as well, and Dylan Falco now being the head coach of the roster. So to start off with Vitality, most hype team coming into the season. People are calling it the EU super team, and most certainly this team has the potential to be the best in the league. And once again, I initially had them as the best in the league, but then I looked at the team a bit closer, and I think that Fnatic are actually more solid overall. There is definitely the upside of Vitality, where if Vitality can reach the kind of level that a lot of people are assigning them, then they can actually be the next G2, and then Perks is going to be considered most definitely the best Western player of all time, and they could potentially go to semifinals or maybe even finals at the Worlds again. But I think we are far away from that. We are two splits away from that. And to me personally, I think there are a lot of players who were kind of close to greatness, or they were flirting with greatness, but they did not quite get there. So right off the bat, Selfmade, if you go like a year or two ago, everyone would tell you that this is the best jungler in EU, that he's much better than Jankos, that he's going to carry Fnatic. And then when Fnatic let him go because of some supposedly personality issues, everyone was hating Fnatic for it. They were screaming about how they could let him go, etc., etc. Bippo was uh, considered to be one of the main proponents of this move, obviously with his role swap. And Fnatic came out all right, well, as Selfmade was on Vitality for the majority of the year, and he did not look very good at all. So, or at least his team did not. He looked all right, but he did not look like the by far best jungler in EU, for me at least. And so I think this jungler has some question marks surrounding him, not necessarily about his personality. I don't think some people were saying that Perks and Selfmade will not go together. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think actually this team is pretty well set up. Alphari is someone who is not going to be making a lot of problems in the team. Karze also is a pretty easygoing personality, and Labrov, in my opinion, although I don't know much about this guy, or as much about this guy as I know about Alfari and Karze, but to me, he also isn't someone who's going to be constantly picking fights with Selfmade. So the only real issue is the mid jungle synergy, but to me, it seems like these two players, rather than fighting each other, are kind of supporting each other and should be synergistically actually getting the best out of each other instead of hampering their performance. So, regardless, though, there will definitely be, or there are some personality problems that will definitely arise if Vitality does not do well. And that's not as likely, but it is possible. And I would say that one of the possibilities is the bot lane. We are going into a meta which might focus a lot more on bot lane, on enchanter supports, on AD carries, and that has not been the case for like the past 3 years basically. I think I said the exact same thing in my last video, and so now we are actually going to see which bot laners and especially which AD carries are good. And since there are actually a lot of a lot of new AD carries or AD carries that are not as proven. It will be a very interesting split for me in EU to see which bot lane actually comes up ahead, because a lot of the supports and AD carries are either new or are in maybe their senior year and have not yet shown to be world class or to be top tier in EU. So it will be very interesting, and that's also partially why I think Upset is just that that much ahead of everyone else right now, and why I in the end ranked Fnatic first. Anyway, to get back to Vitality, Karze has struggled a bit. I actually believe a lot in this guy. If you didn't know, I'm Czech, so maybe some nationalistic instinct there. But regardless, I have said that this guy can make it into LCS like 4 years ago, as I did about Humanoid. Both of them made it, and I think although he's not even the best Czech carry in the league, he is in the top 5 carries for me for sure. Partially because there are just so many new carries. You have Jezu, you have Comp, you have Xmate, you have Neon, a Slovakian AD carry who competed against Karze and was, in my eyes, usually worse than him. Uh, you have Unforgiven, you have obviously Plague from G2. So a lot of new promising talent on AD carry position, but to me, Karze is the same kind of talent. He is just as raw as many of the maybe newer ADCs, but I think that now that he has the experience of being on the top tier roster of winning trophies, he could, under the guide of perks, uh, improve significantly and carry the mantle, and soon be considered one of the better players in LEC history as a whole. Right now, though, that is yet to be seen, and he was largely carried by his team by players like Kaiser and Humanoid. So I think Karze has a lot to prove on this Vitality, and if he can look world class. If he can look like Upset on Fnatic, then Vitality has a lot of gas to cook with, and then they could potentially even beat out Fnatic. To me, though, I think that this team overall is just slightly worse than Fnatic. They are definitely the second best team for me. They are, in my opinion, still pretty far ahead of G2, but Fnatic are just another monster. Just to touch maybe a bit more on Alfari, I think he is going to. I don't think he lost a step going to NA. I think he is still going to be the de facto best top laner in the in LEC, but uh, he is not necessarily the biggest carry top laner, so that might actually suit him. But again, I'm a bit scared on about what happens if maybe everything doesn't go so smoothly and if Vitality start dropping some games. So that's all the talk about Vitality. Let's get back to G2, the other tier A team, and I think the G2 downgraded in many aspects. Of course, the right off the bat at the start of the offseason, we knew that the 3 lanes that were changed were going to be changed, and we knew that basically Jankos and Cubs did not want to play with Reckless anymore. So, what were the options? I don't think you could get upset. I think he was on contract, but other than that, I think pretty much every ADC was on the line. I know that G2 were inquiring about Karze, though I get why they wouldn't go for him. He did not look that impressive. I think Patrick could have been an interesting choice for someone who actually analyzes the game, not necessarily because of the hype. And of course, Hansama, though it looks like Carlos just didn't want to compete against the NA Orcs when it came to salary. So in the end, they ended up on Flake. I don't know that much about this guy. I know that he's hyped as a second coming of Jesus by some, and considered a complete trash by others. So, as it usually goes in these kind of scenarios, it's probably going to be something in the middle. Targamas, though, I think is a very good support, and so this bot lane I have more hope in than most of the other bot lanes uh, in LEC. And Dylan Falco has always been a coach that can implement or integrate, sorry, the kind of rookie players into the team. So I think that's going to help Flake especially as well. And the last roster change that happened for G2 is Broken Blade. Here I have no issues at all. I think Broken Blade could potentially be the best top laner in the league if Alphare and Wander don't uh, don't kind of show up their best form. And Odamne as well should be mentioned in this discussion. And I said, I remember, when was it? 2020, when TSM got 0-6 in their group. I said that TSM had the roster to beat all those teams that beat them in that group stage at Worlds. And big part of that was that I thought even back then that Broken Blade was the best top laner in the group. Actually, I don't remember exactly, but he definitely was, I think, the best carry top laner in that group. So this guy, I think, deserves all the praise he has been getting last split and last year, and I'm excited to see him on the top roster, and I'm excited about this top half of the map for G2. I don't think Jankos is washed at all. Maybe some people could be concerned about that, but I think that now he gets a different environment, that maybe he can be a bit more aggressive, that we are going to see a different Jankos. Also, ganking junglers were improved, so that's going to help him out as well. Jankos has been known as the king of first blood, and I hope to have that guy return onto the Rift. Uh, what could happen? What could make this G2 team fall apart is if Jankos is not effective in early game, if Flake is not as good as he is hyped up to be, and if Caps as well continues to degrade. I feel like Caps has been considered far and ahead the best mid laner for 2 years in 2018, no, in 2019 and 20. And then he kind of slowed down in 2021 last year. Humanoid, Larsen largely caught up to him. Even Abedag at times played pretty well and could match him. So uh, actually, these players, I think, could now overtake Caps and be better than him. Also, Perix is coming back, so we are going to see how that rivalry continues. And yeah, I still feel like Caps has the potential to be the best mid laner in EU, maybe with the exception of Humanoid, who I trust a lot. But he is going to have to try his hardest. And this is the year where Caps is really going to have to prove himself, and where Jankos is going to either say that he retires soon or that he can continue another 5 years and have a glorious career still. All right, let's move on to kind of the middle of the table teams, the teams that are, to me, most likely not going to be in title contention, but which are almost certainly making playoffs. So as you can see here, Midlands actually ranked fourth in the player rankings or in the power ranking based on player strength. But I will now put Rogue here in B tier, and then I will put Mad Lions and Excel here, and I would even put Mad Lions behind Excel. So why is that? Okay, why are Rogue here and Excel and Mad Lions are here? Well, although Rogue do not have the strongest roster, and I'm quite disappointed by their offseason. They kind of downgraded in the jungle, or at least made a sideways move, and they, in my opinion, definitely downgraded in bot lane. Also, Trimbe, I think the biggest issue on their team from last year is still in the roster, so I don't see this roster as being that great, but they still have Larson, they still have Odamni, and if you have these two strong solo lanes, it almost doesn't matter what else you have in the team. It's going to somehow end up all right. I feel like so. Malarank also is not the strongest jungler in the world, but he is all right. He is definitely serviceable, and if there are not many communication issues, which I don't foresee really happening, sure, Malrank might not be fluent exactly at English, but I think he can definitely call out the most important stuff in the game. And then you have the bot lane where things could crumble again, especially if the meta is heavily ADC focused. Then I worry about what Trimby can do on enchanters, and Comp is going to have to prove himself once again. As I said, there are a lot of new AD carries, a lot of promising AD carries, and I feel like this spring season is going to depend almost entirely on how well some of these carries can carry and how well they can play. So Cobb to me is someone who I'm not necessarily down on, but I'm not also picking up as some huge star that is going to just surprise everyone. I think he played pretty well last year. I think he overall is pretty serviceable. Some people hype him up, some people say that he's not that great. Again, I will have to see. And yes, I'm kind of lukewarm on this team, but I still have them in the number 4 spot and alone in the B tier just because of their solo lanes and just because of what basically Rogue did in the past 2 years. I feel like although large parts of the roster are changed, the two most important pieces in Odamne and Larsen remain, and that should be, in my opinion, enough to fight off some of the other competition, which, in my opinion, the bottom half of LEC is not that strong. So, yep, that's pretty much it. And then I have three kind of rosters which are all, in my opinion, could potentially actually even beat Rogue, and they could end up as at the fourth spot. In fact, if I were to guess right now, I would say one of these teams is more likely to be the at the fourth position than Rogue, but I think Rogue are overall uh, just a bit more stable. So as I put them on the tier list, that's exactly how I would rank them. Excel first, Medline second, and BDS third. And once again, I'm going to read out the roster. So for Excel, that's going to be Finn in top lane, Markun in jungle, Mugrat Kmet, Patrick as ADC, and Adrian support. So other than the top lane change, Excel are staying the same as they did last summer, and that could be surprising to some because uh, they only changed one player, and all of a sudden I'm putting them at the fifth spot where last year they did not even make playoffs. Why is that? Well, I'm gonna be honest. Initially, I really did not want to put Excel into playoffs. Say it's a meme, it's a curse, whatever. If you believe in it or not? Uh, it doesn't matter to me. I was a big Excel fan. Again, I'm from Czech Republic, so I will always stand some of these Czech players that I personally played against in my career and know how good they can be. So Patrick to me can be the best carry in the league. He is already one of the best carries in the league, and Adrian should help him finally cement that position. Markun, a very promising jungle talent who started only very late in the season, so a lot of the arguments are that Excel would make playoffs if they had more time. Simply, they did not change the roster fast enough, and I think that is largely true. But I will add one caveat. Finn, in my opinion, is a big downgrade from Kreis. I think Kreis, although he had his bad moments, had a much higher upside than Finn. So I'm not sure what they meant by this change. I think although yeah, basically, I don't understand this change. Finn is maybe a bit more stable, and he could be fine if the top lane meta is tank heavy or bruiser heavy, and he can just kind of farm up. Also, the TP change does not help him though, because now he cannot affect other lanes. Not like he has been doing much of that, but uh, I don't see him winning 1v1s without some help from maybe well-timed teleports and stuff like that. So yeah, again, I'm a bit lukewarm on this team. I think they have their upsides. For example, if Nugda can get back to his form and maybe is the third or fourth best mid laner in the league, then maybe that's enough for this Excel to look great. But Excel have just burned me too many times for me to put them anywhere above where I have them right now. And then we move on to Mad Lions, another team that, in my opinion, downgraded in the offseason. And their roster is Armut, Elioya, and Kaiser. They are staying. And now the new addition of Reeker in mid lane and Unforgiven on ADC. So, unfortunately, I don't know that much about either of these two new players. Again, two rookies. Unforgiven, I know has been hyped a bit, but in my opinion, is not that great. He is kind of more of a serviceable ADC, whereas Reeker, I have definitely much less information about. I know that he has been on what team was it? He was on Big, and they did quite well in EU Masters. Of course, they were beat by Carmine Corp, but so did everyone else. And I mean, Carmine Corp right now have the reputation of being LEC class, so maybe so is Reeker. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't know much about these two players, but I don't think they are going to be better basically than some of the players on the top teams. And I think Mad Lions have the potential to surprise everyone once again with again new rookies and again be much higher than people might rank them or where I rank them. But for me, I'm just not impressed by these pickups. It's not like Humanoid or Karze where okay, maybe I'm a bit biased, but to me, these two players were for basically like 2 years prior already LEC material, and then they just came into the team and were instantly good. So that's an issue. I also think Armut was very overrated. The main reason why Mad Lions even did so well in playoffs in summer, in my opinion, is that Armut was coached by Visichachi. Of course, Visichachi left soon after, and Armut came back down to his kind of normal form where he only plays Gnar and Wukong. And I don't expect that to change much. So I think if Reeker is not basically if Rieker does not impress from the start, if Rieker is not some new, great, exciting new wave mid lane talent coming from the ERLs, then this team is going to struggle potentially even against some of the bottom tier teams. And yes, I just don't like this team that much. I hate that they did not manage to keep Humanoid. I hate that they didn't manage to keep Karze, or at least get someone that is more hyped for in exchange for them. But with all that negativity, I have to say I believe a lot in this coaching staff, probably the most out of any coaching staff in LEC. So if anyone can do it, it's going to be them. And actually, thinking about it, I maybe should have ranked them higher. All right, BDS. BDS are the newcomer to LEC, and their roster is Adam, Synkrov, Nuclear, Xmete, and Limit. And while I think that Excel and Medlines could potentially impress, you know what? I'm actually going to do this. I think these three teams all have the potential to be way up there, and I think these six teams should be in playoffs. Initially, I was a bit higher on BDS, but if I just look at the roster, and if I consider that they are a very new team, they might have the organization might have some issues transitioning into LEC. Yes, you have Grabs, who has actually kind of made his name uh, playing with these kind of Misfits players, playing with not necessarily the best players, but getting the best out of them. So that's one very sweet spot for BDS, but I'm just not on the Adam hype train. I think Synkrov is going to be good, but again, I don't think he's going to be anywhere near the top three junglers in the league. Nuclear and as well, unlike some of these other mid laners, those the three newcomers from Germany, Certes, Rika, and Dejar, or however you pronounce his name, they are. All three of those are at least a bit unknown to me. They could impress, whereas Nuclear and we've already seen him last split, and he did not look very impressive to me. He did not look that great, so that's a worrying sign to me. And I think, although Limit I would rank very high, and I have a lot of hope in this guy, I don't rank Xmeti that high. So this team has some good potential up and coming stars. I think Adam could improve a lot this year, and maybe towards the end of the year or in summer, he could be actually what a lot of people already hyped him as last split. Whereas, in my opinion, he just wasn't there yet, and especially with Alfari going back, with Broken Blake having a team now where he can show himself. I don't think he is going to fight for top five, but I'm not even sure that he can make it there. And then Nuclear Ant, again, I don't think even in the top half of the mid laners. So yes, overall this team is just kind of a middle of the table, and I think especially in Spring Split they might stumble from the start, but in summer we could see maybe one change, maybe no changes, maybe actually all of the players click together. And in summer, I might reconsider my rankings, but for as far as Spring Split goes, I think they are just barely going to miss playoffs. All right, so we've kind of went away from the good teams now. I think all of these teams are, although they have some not so great parts. They have also some promising rookie talent, and they have some upside to them. Every single one of these teams, and all of these teams could be in playoffs. In my opinion, all of these teams could potentially even go to Worlds if we are looking ahead to summer. But when we go to these three, I'm just pretty much disappointed. I will leave out Astralis for last, but right now, let's just quickly read out the Misfits and the SK roster. So, Misfits have hit it, staying from last year, Shlatan in jungle, Viteo staying from last year, Neon and Mersa. So, obviously a huge, in my opinion, downgrade in the jungle position. They lost Razork. Instead of him, they are getting Shlatan, who is a potential talent. Again, I don't know that much about him. I know that he's been in Misfits Premier prior, and he uh, very recently actually beat the this kind of hyped Carmine Corp team. So if you are just going purely of results, he has been winning pretty much everything he was a part of, or was at least in top four of EU Masters, stuff like that. So if you are saying he was on a good team, that therefore he has to be good, sure, that logic kind of holds up. So I would say this guy can potentially be impress me, and maybe I'm going to say that he's the new Razork in summer. But right now, I just don't know about enough about this guy, and I just wouldn't bet on him suddenly being as good as Razork was last year. BTO is obviously staying. Hirt is staying as well. I think both of these players are potentially good, or potentially in the top five in their role, but neither one of them is necessarily towards the upper part of the top five. Both of them would rank at maybe the fifth spot. Maybe VTO could rank at number four, somewhere like that. But I don't see those players being some amazing star that's just going to blow every other team out of the water. Against Zlatan, could see him maybe just having an amazing spring split, but maybe towards the end he gets figured out, cannot carry as hard. I think this team has some upside, and I would be happy about this roster if it wasn't for the Razor loss, basically. Neon instead of Kobe is, in my opinion, a nice upgrade. That's going to help out Misfits as well, so no problem there. And Mersa, I don't know much about, but it seems like the bot lanes in Greece are pretty good, and I feel like I can trust Misfits to at least have a good eye for talent, kinda. So again, Mersa to be seen if he is good. I think again one of those bot lanes where you have an ADC who has been in the league for some time but has not proven himself yet, and a newcomer in support. So again, this bot lane is going to make or break this team, in my opinion. I think here it is just going to be a staple in top lane. Zlatan could potentially impress. Viteho could potentially impress as well and improve upon his spring and summer of last year. But if this bot lane is not good, then this team just cannot win against some of the stronger competition. And so, can Neon and Mersa make it basically? SK Gaming are right behind Misfits, and they have Chinox top lane, Gilius jungle, Certus as a mid laner, Jesu ADC, and Treats as a support. And to me, this roster is where it goes down from, okay, I can see maybe you don't want to spend as much money, maybe you are taking some gambles on a talent, to this is just pretty bad to me. Genax role swap to top. Initially, I was pretty hyped on him, he looked pretty good. But now that some of the better top laners are coming back into the league, and in my opinion, Vander should have a resurgence here. He is going to drop a couple of rankings, and just overall, ever since he role swapped, he looked pretty good the first split, but then he pretty much went downhill or just kind of stagnated. So this is not a very impressive top laner for me. Kilios, I feel like by now everyone should know what we get from this guy. Sure, is he going to maybe carry some of your games? Yes. Is he going to lose some of your games? Also, yes. I cannot be mad about this from the standpoint of SK, since I feel like Gillius is one of those players that could potentially carry this team to more victories than they deserve. Certus, again, another German mid laner or mid laner from Germany who did pretty well in last EU Masters and in LFL. So sure, this guy can potentially be good. We'll see. It feels like people just watched EU Masters. They watched Carmine be beaten, and all of a sudden everyone wants all the unknown players from these teams. So sure, he can be good. Would I bet on him being better than, let's say, Humanoid, let's say Perks, let's say Caps, let's say even Nukeduck in his first splits? I would not. And then just Treats. Treats is going back from the jungle position back to support, and I don't know. Treats is not as great in my eyes anymore. I get it. He rolls out for the team, but to me it still diminished him a bit. I think towards the end of his tenure on SK, he was not as impressive. So here we'll see if he can kind of capture some of that lightning again and be again considered one of the best supports. But he has a lot of competition, a lot of new faces, a lot of faces that kind of strengthened their position last in the summer, where he role swapped and was unable to play his original role. So whereas maybe in spring I would put him as one of the best supports, now it's a lot more up in the air. I think Limit can contest him, Labrov can contest him, Kaiser can contest him for sure, Helisen can contest him, Tarkamas could contest him, Advent potentially could contest him. So the only real really supports that you are almost locked to me better than are Promiscue, Trembe, and maybe Mersa. Although again, I don't know much about this guy. So as you can see, he's already kind of for me in the bottom half of the teams. Even if one or two of those supports does not end up panning out, there are still a couple more that will most likely. So Treats to me has fallen a lot, and he has to be the playmaker on this team if they want to have any sort of success. And that's again another part. Chesu is going in as his ADC, and I have not been impressed by this guy at all. And yeah, I would have liked to see someone else maybe get a chance on this roster. He's all right, but he's not impressive, and I think he's going to be maybe the weakest part of this roster, and I don't think he's going to carry as many games as most of the other ADCs in the league. All right, that's it. And finally, we move on to the worst. I don't know. Vitality, it feels like every season Vitality are competing against themselves on who can or on how bad they of a roster they can make and still get away with it. So they have in top lane Fight Night, jungle Zanzara, mid lane Dejor or Dyer. I'm not sure how to pronounce that again, and I'm probably just now going to call him the mid laner of Astralis. Kobe as an ADC and Promiscue as a support. So right off the bat, I think you have the worst support in the league by far. Promiscue has been given like 100 chances, and he always disappointed. I don't know why you would still keep this guy in the team. White Knight also, in my opinion, has been given more than enough chances and usually disappointed. He was not terrible last year, but again, he was not impressive either. To me, this guy has been in the scene for quite a long time, and while I'm not necessarily against some of these players who are a bit older getting a chance, I feel like White Knight has already been given two chances, and in both he looked meh to me. So I would have liked to see maybe some of the hyped top laners from EU Masters, or maybe even outside of EU Masters. I know at least about one or two players that could fill the spot in top lane that would have been a better pickup than White Knight, in my opinion. So to me, this is a very underwhelming top lane pick as well, and also potentially the worst top laner in the league. Then you have Kobe again, uh, a guy who was considered like the top 4 ADC about 2-3 years back. Then he went to NA, he went back, and he was all right. But to me, Kobe right now, we already know what we are going to get from this guy. He can potentially be an LEC still for me, and he is not like bad, but with just so many new ADCs and so much talent coming into that position, into that lane, I just feel like this bot lane is going to struggle really hard. Comba and Promiscu, I feel like if they make it out of lane, then maybe they can start doing something, but it's going to be very difficult for them. I think Jeska was not great, but he also, I don't know why we would change him for Kobe basically. And they are uh, another German mid laner. And again, I think all three of these new German mid laners are kind of on the same level for me. I don't know that much about them, but I know that they all were pretty pivotal part in their team's success. So I think at least one of these three is going to be good because of the track record of Astralis. I would bet that the Yor is the least likely to do so. He also has the least accomplishments, although he did make it into the final of EU Masters, right? So that's something. And admittedly, with a weaker roster than the other two players, one of which he beat directly. And then you have Zanzara. That's like the only player that I would praise a bit in this team. Uh, but again, I think Zanzara is the kind of jungler who plays for the team, who picks those kind of tanks, those ganking junglers that could work good. That could work in this meta well, but he is not the kind of carry player like Selfmade, like Razor, like maybe even Schlatan. So just this roster is so meh overall. I think if your best player is Zanzara, which in my opinion here is, they are is probably the de facto best player, but that's just because he could not yet show that he is bad. And I would be very surprised if this roster does make it out of the 10th spot. I feel like every other team has at least one or two names that I can get excited about, and here it's just nothing. It's just absolutely nothing. All right, that's going to be it for the video. Uh, if you like, subscribe. Yes, subscribe. And also, I'm going to start doing some VOD reviews, maybe watch alongs for mainly LCK, but also maybe LEC and LCS. So if you'd like that, type it in the comments, and I also will be posting a link to my Twitch on down below.